Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
Welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again for a radio audience tuning in at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com. We're glad that you all can be with us. Also tuning in online worldwide via our podcast at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music. We're glad you all could be with us as well. I think today, as we kind of look at the world, sometimes it's hard to believe or remember what's possible, but our next guest definitely has been able to show people by example what it means to not only have an idea, but also to have faith and to put that to action. We're excited to welcome Austin-Gayne to our broadcast today. Austin is the CEO of S-Force and the creator of SuperX Apparel. We're going to talk to him not only about what it's been like for him to be able to show people what is possible for life, but also to show people by example what they can be able to do in their own lives as well. If you guys are not staying connected with Austin, we'll let you know how to be able to find him, as well as stay connected with his brand as well. Austin, thank you again for the time. Really appreciate it.
Yes, Cyrus, thank you for the kind introduction.
Hey, the pleasure's definitely all mine. So, Austin, I want to definitely give a shout-out to our mutual friend, Zach Tepperman, ZTPR, for setting up this chat. And when he first told me about you, I was excited to be able to have you on the program, one, because what you've been able to do is right up our wheelhouse. What we try to do is show people, of course, successful individuals, but also how they've been able to show by work and faith what's possible. So I want to begin there for you. What has it been like for you, Austin, to kind of take a step back and to think about the brand and the business you've been able to build?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things I am extremely passionate about is not only obviously growing a business, starting a business, but also the journey, right? I grew up in a very, very small town. I grew up without a biological father. I didn't really have a lot of advantages that, I would say some of my peers had, and I was able to kind of build this business. And basically, the key for me and just basically what I'm extremely passionate about is helping people go from just starting out to basically being able to make measurable progress. And one thing that's really fortunate for me is I grew so slowly. I'm what you'd call an overnight success that takes 10 years, right? That's the way I like to think about it. And it wasn't only until recently until some of the things that I've been working on really started to pay off. And I'll kind of lean into that more in a second, but it's really important to initially start with a vision or an ambition or a desire of wanting more than what you have. And it's okay to want more than what you have. A lot of times, a lot of people feel complacent, they feel stuck, and they're really unsupported to kind of want more, or they're guilted or shamed upon. And I think the first thing to do is to kind of acknowledge, hey, it's okay to want more. It's just the way you go about it, right? That's what people are primarily worried about. So if you want more out of your life, that's great. There's no need to hide it. There's no need to feel shame for it or guilt to other people, family, friends, whatever. So that's kind of like step one, is just to acknowledge, hey, you might want more out of your life, and whatever that means to you, whether it's starting a business, pursuing an athletic career, going to college, whatever that journey for you entails. So to me, that's how it really starts out with, is just acknowledging that and making it public, hey, I want more. And then the next thing that would have really helped me when I started out was kind of having a long-term holistic view. A lot of people overestimate what they can do in, a year or 6 months, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I was definitely not an exception to that rule. I thought in a year I would be a millionaire, I'd have a successful business, and unfortunately it took me over 10 years of working and basically working towards this goal to be able to see some of those initial goals I had actualized. So in addition to obviously giving yourself permission to pursue that and telling others you're going to pursue that, give yourself some patience. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. The only reason I am where I'm at right now is I just never gave up over the course of the 10 years. I had my faith, I had perseverance, and I had my reasons. I have my beautiful wife, I have my employees, I have consumers. So over the years, I just had to shift from, hey, I'm going to be successful in 6 months to this might take a decade or two, but I'll get there eventually. So I hope that kind of helps answer that kind of question you had.
Yeah, Austin, it does, and it brings up a couple points that I would love to be able to go into with you for our audience, because I think a lot of it also is self-limiting beliefs, right, why a lot of people don't even try. So I guess an obvious question to me to you would be, what made you know that it was possible? Because so many people, as you know, they look at where they're from, they look at their circumstances, and they say, I can't do this because of X, Y, or Z. What made you say, I can do this in spite of X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a two-tiered approach, right? For me personally, it might be a little different than anyone listening in. But for me personally, because I grew up without any help from anybody else, like I said, didn't have a biological father, don't have an extended family, no trust, I didn't really have any benefits. It allowed me to know early on in my life that if I was going to do anything, whether it was a mediocre existence, whether it was a subpar existence or an exceptional experience in life, it was going to be up to me. So early on, I had to accept that responsibility of, hey, if my life, whatever my life turns out for it to be, whether it's good or bad, it's going to be up to me. And to basically switch that from just kind of accepting complacency and kind of believing I can do more, it's actually a combination of things, right? So for me, it was a combination of desire, and I don't think anyone on this or listening to this has a problem with that. You go on social media, you see somebody living your dream life, or you look at your neighbor and they have something that you want. So for me, I believe it could start with an unhealthy or maybe a less humble or a less admirable decision to move forward. If you just want a new car, if you just want a new house, or if you just want to do something to impress people, I think those are okay reasons to start with, as long as that's not your reason for the long term. And for me, what really allowed me to go from, believing, hey, that's cool, I wish I could have that, that looks nice, but I don't know if I could have that, to actually believing I could, was, just like you mentioned, it was going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And I personally did that through a combination of reading self-help books, listening to podcasts, radio interviews like this, and looking up to mentors who already had accomplished the things I wanted to, which then translated that belief into me. So the best advice in terms of getting from where you want to or from where you're at to where you want to is to do a combination of work, meaning read books, listen to things, and start to learn about success, in addition to finding people who, whether you can reach them in real life or only digitally, who are doing what you want and just have their energy and their belief system surround you. So if you could do those two things, over time, your brain will rewire and you'll be able to basically shift into a growth mindset.
Wow, such a powerful thing, and such a great thing that you mentioned there, Austin. I love the fact, though, that you also realized that, if you wanted to be able to do something, of course, who we surround ourselves with matter. Who we listen to matters, right? Whether we're talking about books or podcasts or having, as you mentioned there, having a mentor, having a coach. So I want to flip it around then, Austin. What has it been like for you now, again, looking at 2024, what has it been like for you now to be that person for someone else, that you're that person that people are looking to and listening to? You're that person now that people aspire to be like. How does that feel to have it reversed on you now?
No, that's a great question, and it's funny you said that, because it's still hard for me to believe that. I still suffer from imposter syndrome, because it wasn't 2 years ago where my businesses were struggling and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it another month in business. It was only recently where that 10 years plus of hard work really compounded itself to allowing me to get results more recently. So I don't want to pretend, I'll humble myself a little bit. I don't want to pretend that I'm like, some know-it-all or is I have the answers to anything. But one thing that has reshifted my perspective is I feel like I'm a normal guy. I came from a very normal upbringing, which means that I'm like most people. And I realize because I'm like most people, I have a power that not a lot of geniuses or smart people or people with advantages do. I'm able to talk to the average person, which is the majority of people, and I'm able to understand and being able to help guide them from where they are to where they want to be, because I remember going from my businesses, going from sales from $1 to $2 to $10. I remember every incremental step along the way, and I didn't get lucky. It didn't happen overnight, and I started from a very similar life experience that they are. So for me to be in this position, I will say that I do feel like an imposter sometimes, and I don't necessarily think I'm the smartest person, but the best thing about this is I'm able to really connect with people from where they are and help them to get to where they're going, because I did the same exact thing.
Such a great point. For those who are just tuning in on Radio Side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome Austin-Gayne to our broadcast today. Austin is the CEO of S-Force and the creator of SuperX. So let's get into SuperX. How did SuperX come about for you, Austin?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, this is my first business, and I'm quite fortunate that it has grown and I didn't fail. But it came out of a place of desperation. I immediately after high school, I dropped out of college twice. I moved across the country from California to Florida, and I got a job, and eventually within 6 months I started making six figures as an employee. And I was like, okay, I'm set, this is it for me. But within 2 years after that, I had bought in cars, I had put myself in a risky financial place. I had gotten laid off and fired out of the blue, and it really shook me to my core. I had to basically go from this cushy lifestyle that a 21-year-old is living, making six figures, to I had to move back in with my mom, and they, and it was really hard on my ego, and it was really hard on me. So in that place of desperation, where I basically had to shift back to living with their parents, which is embarrassing as in your 20s. I had to shift back, and I started to ideation. I started to think about, hey, I want to do something, and I don't want to be able to get fired again. I don't want my life to be out of my control. So I started to think, hey, maybe I need to start a business so that way I can't get fired again. So then I started to brainstorm different ideas, and my background is in fitness. I like working out. I also really like superheroes. I like the Marvel movies. I like the DC movies. I really like those characters. And I was watching an Avengers movie, and if anyone's watched any superhero movie, the actors on screen, they're jacked. They're in great shape. And it kind of clicked for me. Okay, there is some connection here between superheroes and fitness. All of these guys, they look great. All of these girls, they look great. So there is some connection here. You read the comics, it's the same story. So I connected at the time what I thought was the idea between I'm going to make supplements that are comic book themed. And as you could probably tell if you go to my website now, that's not there anymore. That was a failure. I put my entire life savings at the time, and it failed. I didn't sell a single one of those bottles. In fact, we destroyed the inventory because I couldn't sell it. And that pivoted to the next idea, which I had, was workout programs, because again, it's the same thought of fitness and superheroes. And then when that failed, I nearly gave up. But then I thought, okay, we'll try one more idea. And I tried activewear, meaning clothes you work out with combined with superheroes or pop culture. And it got traction. It worked. I started to see people interested in the concept. So with no money, I decided to launch pre-orders just to test the market, just to see, hey, am I crazy or do people want this? And we started to make sales as a pre-order. And this was a few years ago. And all the way until now, it's been very hard. It's been very brutal. I didn't start with funding. I didn't get investors. I did this brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And I managed, only this year, I just signed a contract with Disney for Marvel Studios. And Marvel, if you guys are aware, it's the superhero, it's the Avengers, Iron Man, all of those properties. And it took me nearly 5 years in business, going out of business more times than I can count, and tons of pivots and frustrations and heartbreak along the way. But I'm just so glad that I'm able to get to the place now where we are working with some of the biggest companies on earth.
That is definitely an inspiring story, Austin. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'm sure people listening to that, as they hear you talk about starting something and then not seeing the results you wanted, but then pivoting. I want to talk about the power of the pivot, because other people, as you know, would have just given up, said, okay, this didn't work, and I'm sure there are people who may have said, you see, that's not going to work, and they would have gone back to doing something else. What made you not give up on you? What made you say, okay, maybe this didn't work, but let me try this?
No, that's a great question, and I don't have an exact answer. I know that, a part of it comes from my faith. Part of it comes from knowing I don't have a plan B. I could go back to college because I had already dropped out twice. I didn't have a job backup. I had, this has to work or else. So I want to basically give credit to desperation and just not, and there's a terminology or a term you might have heard Tony Robbins say, but he says, burn the boats. And while I don't recommend that for people who have a family to provide for and, and all those things that life has for us as adults, I was in a time in my life where I could burn the boats, and this was either going to work or I had no other option. So to your point, pivoting is so important because people believe when they start a business, and if anyone's listening that's interested in a business, a side hustle or whatever, this is the biggest takeaway I hope anyone takes from this episode is that people, what business is, it's a science experiment. And what is a science experiment? It's a hypothesis. And if you guys think about when you guys were in class going to high school and you had science projects, what would you do? You had a hypothesis, which is, here's how I think this project's going to work. And then you test it out, and you test that out, 10, 20, 30 times, and then you monitor those results. Then you write basically feedback off those results, and then you basically make changes to those results. starting a business, creating a side hustle, whatever it is you want to do is very similar. It's exactly like a science project. You make a hypothesis saying, hey, I think this idea is going to sell, or I think this might be a good idea for a business or whatever. But then you have to go to the market, which is reality, and you have to test that idea with the market, and then that market will tell you, hey, this is going to work or it's not. And then if it doesn't, you don't have to say, oh, project over, business over, idea over. All you have to do is go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me make some modifications and then test the new idea. So as long as you can correlate business, side hustles, whatever it is, with just, I just got to keep testing until the right idea works, then you'll be successful. And there's a famous quote by Thomas Edison when he was creating the light bulb. Somebody asked him in an interview, they said, weren't you discouraged, failing 10,000 times? And he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And I think that quote has radiated with me since I first heard it many years ago. And I think that if you have that perspective when starting a business that, hey, it's probably not going to work out, and if it does on the first try, bravo to you. Great, that's fantastic. But for my story, Thomas Edison, and even another story of the Airbnb story, and if you guys aren't familiar with Airbnb, they are one of the largest hotel accommodations in terms of renting out your house, right? Everyone's familiar with Airbnb. But the crazy part is not a lot of people know this. At one point, they were selling cereals from the cereal boxes. I'm talking about a box of cereals called Obama Oats and Captain McCain's because they needed to get money to keep their business going. So the point is just because your first idea doesn't work out, or second or third, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. It just means you need to find the right idea, and you can only find the right idea through perseverance and continuing to test it with the market.
Wow. Such a great point and such a great lesson for all of us when it comes to the importance of hard work, resilience, and faith, Austin. And that's why we're glad to have you here. Again, everyone, Austin-Gayne has been our guest, the CEO of S-Force and the creator of SuperX, sharing with us the journey that has led him to the success he has today, but also the lessons learned that now he's sharing with others. Austin, where can our audience go to be able to stay connected with you as well as to be able to find out more information about the brand?
Yeah, so first point I will make, guys, anybody that is running a business that's a business owner, they're not going to be famous, right, unless they're a Fortune 500 CEO. So this is the biggest hack I'll tell everybody before I plug my socials in. If you want to reach out to the CEO of any of the brands you probably buy products from, your favorite clothing company, the internet companies, they probably don't have a big following because people are either focused on building a social media presence or they're focused on building a business. And from my perspective, a lot of the big business owners, they don't even post on social media. So you can contact me on Instagram at austin-gayne, or, which is what I'm trying to say, contact any other CEO who's running a legitimate business, and I can almost guarantee you that you'll be able to reach them because, again, they're worried about building a business, not posting on Instagram.
We'll make sure that we link that up as well, Austin. Austin, congratulations to you again. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey with us. Congratulations on all of your successes, and looking forward to having you back on the broadcast again.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you for your time today and for having me on. It's been a true pleasure. I hope you guys have a blessed week and a blessed day. Thank you again.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. And definitely shout out to Zach Tepperman of ZTPR for setting up this chat for us. And thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let's go make today amazing. Take care.